Hey, what's going on? It's Max.
It's RJ.
And you're on Streaming Cassettes. We are so pumped up. We have our first interview on the show, which is great. I mean, we've interviewed people before, but the first time on this show, which is awesome. We got Kyle, aka the lead man, kind of like a one-stop shop even of chasing airplanes. That's pretty sweet, dude. How are you?
Hey, not bad. How are you guys? Yeah, I'm the everything. Just one guy in a room kind of situation going on.
It's impressive because I think a lot of times you have to use so many different aspects of your creativity to actually create a finished product.
Yeah, it's interesting because for a very long time I had just I played in bands, obviously, where you just kind of did the one thing, and I kind of just started piddling about in the room, and stuff just started happening, and it's been fun though. I'm enjoying doing it. It's been a good adult years thing going on.
That's awesome, dude.
Nice.
But yeah, RJ, I know you wanted to kick off a couple questions.
Yeah, I think we should just start with the elephant in the room. How are you doing? How are you doing with COVID? How are you adjusting?
Yeah, so it's really weird because in my normal life, normal job that pays the bills and what have you, I travel a lot, do a lot of driving, out and about quite a bit. So it's been quite the adjustment to be stuck inside for the majority of the time. So initially that was kind of a little horrifying and horrible, but I do think it's been good in the sense that it has kind of forced me to sit down and do music a little bit more aggressively than I think I probably would have done previously, because I'm here. So during breaks from work, I can just work on things. I can work on editing guitars, which is just the most boring task in the world, but it's got to be done. So I think that it's very easy for me to say, this sucks. This has been terrible. It's very boring being stuck inside. But all in all, the music side of it's been really good because it's kind of forced some creativity that I think is, really positive, I would say. So that's a long roundabout way to say that, I'm hanging in there. We're doing fine. We're alive. We're kicking. I can't complain too much.
Now, have you done any shows either virtually or socially distant? I know some places are having, depending on what state you're in, they're doing kind of concerts and, venue type of shows. Or has it been just more studio work?
No, so I've been exclusively doing studio stuff currently. I'm kind of in the beginning phases of looking to what does live performances look like post-COVID. I'm in Florida though, so the amount of cases here have been rapidly increasing since the beginning, far outpacing a lot of other parts of the country. So it's a little tough right now. So I know there's been a few. I'm in the Tampa Bay area. There's been a few shows here and there that are just like really small, like acoustic coffee shop type things, but those are kind of few and far between from what I understand. So mostly just stuck doing studio work right now.
No, that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of a good time, like you said, to sort of reflect on, sort of like what you're looking for as a direction as an artist, and you can kind of like hone in, and everyone's sort of in the same camp. So you're not at a disadvantage that you're not putting out enough music as other people that like of equal, like in the genre, like equal level of production.
Yeah, what's crazy is it's honestly weird because I know a lot of bigger artists. They the whole thing is you release an album, you tour to support it, and that's how it goes. But there've been, that I can think of right now, 3 pretty large metal albums that have come out this year. From Polaris, Make Them Suffer, and Fit for a King, that have all been really, really good and have done really, really well. And that's so interesting to me because that's so against the traditional mindset of how you release and promote music. But they've seemed to done really well in a kind of streaming world that we're sitting in right now.
You can go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I agree with that because I think Fit for a King actually got 1 million listeners alone just from that album.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys listen to Finn McKenty's The Punk Rock MBA ever.
Yeah, I watched that.
Oh yeah, that's a good channel. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. So he had Tuck O'Leary on there talking about that, and apparently they knew, that you had to adjust how you were going to release this album, and made friends with the guys at Spotify. Kind of played that streaming game that you got to play to get on those bigger playlists. So I think that's awesome. It's a unique way of doing things, and seems to work out well for some of these bands.
Right. Yeah. So Kyle, take us back. Where did you grow up, and what were some of the influences when you were growing up in the music world?
So I'm from South Mississippi. So grew up about an hour from New Orleans in South Mississippi.
That explains the Saints hats.
Yes, that does explain all the Saints hats. So I currently live in Tampa. My father actively joked when I moved here that he would disown me if I became a Buccaneers fan. So got to keep the Saints swag strong. So yeah, that does explain that. We moved up to the Jackson, Mississippi area whenever I was in high school, which is kind of where the music stuff started happening. So it's pretty normal. You meet people in school that you're with, start playing music, things happen, that sort of thing. I played in a band from 16 to 22-ish or so. And it was, I won't lie, it's pretty generic metalcore, very much influenced by the, Devil Wears Pradas and A Day to Remembers, of that time. A lot of August Burns Red's Composure. We were all about that. So, that was kind of the deal at the time. And then, obviously grow up and move away. And I live in Florida now, obviously. But it's interesting because I grew up in this really conservative Christian home where there was no metal, no non-Jesus music. So it was interesting when I got to, we got to high school, started meeting people. There's the Linkin Parks, the PODs, that was at the time the heaviest thing I'd ever heard in my life. And it was, oh dear God, this is crazy, but amazing at the same time. So that opened up a lot of musical possibilities for me. And the thing that kind of really shifted me to metal was, I think it was when Under Oath released They're Only Chasing Safety, which was not a heavy album whatsoever. No. It was very mellow, but it was the first stuff I'd ever heard that had that much screaming in it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. And so it kind of just, it snowballed significantly from there. So did a lot in the Jackson, Mississippi music scene for a long time there. So played lots of shows, did some touring here and there. That sort of thing until I, moved down to Florida, and here I am.
Has the influence changed at all? Like, you're still listening to metalcore, obviously, but has there been any sprinkling of anything else?
Yeah. So it's whenever I was, angsty 16-year-old, it was metal, only metal. And there was, the Under Oath and that sort of thing, but I was also really into like Dimmu Borgir, Behemoth, like stuff like that. But that was it. It was just like metal, heavy music, that sort of thing. As I got older, I started really enjoying electronic music. Like there's this band out of Georgia called The Midnight. I don't know if you've heard them or if any of your listeners heard them, but check them out. They're great.
I think I've heard that name before.
You should go listen to them. They're excellent. I love them. Yeah, it's the one guy, he plays the guitar and sings, and then the other guy's the DJ. But the combos are great. They have great melodies. The music's great. Love it. So I started listening to a lot of that and lights and other electronic type stuff. And I think that's been the biggest kind of shift in influence now. So yeah, I still listen to metal and that sort of thing, but I love electronic music. And I also think that over time, I found that kind of just focusing on metal and nothing else is really restrictive. And I'm losing out on a lot of other things and good things happening in the music world. So, there's a lot of pop artists out there. I don't know if I'm going to get crucified for this, but I liked the new Machine Gun Kelly album. I thought that was lots of fun.
It was pretty good.
Yeah. So, it's kind of opened up as I've gotten older and whatnot. So I now really like the notion of heavy music, but also melodic stuff that's catchy and memorable and people can sing along to and that sort of thing. So that has shifted a little bit over the years.
Yeah, Max is trying to get me into electronic music.
Yeah, my Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Dive in. Yeah, dive in. Get into it. It's great. So much
It
good
is,
stuff.
yes.
Yeah, I've always been a fan since I was younger, but then ironically, my younger brother is a like a producer, and he's in an EDM trio, and has been doing it for the last 4 or 5 years, and that has been dabbling in for quite a while. So it's something I've kind of taken in, listening just on my own, but then I'm more invested because of what he's going through and different things, which is pretty sweet.
No, it's really good. I think that I used to think that electronic music was just the and that was it, and that's all there was to it, and that's kind of boring. But I don't know. There's a lot of really good electronic music out there, and I'd be remiss in saying that Attack Attack's first album was the big mixing of electronic music and heavier music, and that's one of those things I don't think was very appreciated at the time, because I, along with all the other scene kids at the time, was like, this is stupid, this is ridiculous. But now I'm like, that's a damn good album. I love that album. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of good stuff going on in the electronic music world, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people could also recognize, like, kind of on a surface level, okay, like the level of, like, let's say a Marshmello is much different than the level of even like a Martin Garrix, or I'm trying to think of different ones like Madeon and like different artists like that.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot more complexity to what they're actually doing.
Yes. No, for sure. So yeah, because I think people hear the, like, when you think like Marshmello or something, it's a lot of just kind of remixing existing things, and you hear that with some DJs, and that's not that exciting. But you find me some really good, like, original electronic music, and I'm all in on that almost every time. I can really get into that.
Definitely.
So one of the songs, I was checking out your music obviously prior, and your newest single that just came out back in November, Beneath the Veil. I like the sound of that. What was kind of the story behind that song?
So full transparency, with any time I sit down and write anything, I truthfully have to, like, sit down and go, okay, I'm writing something today. Like, it is very rare that I'm just out and about living my life and just something comes to me and it's a song. It's never that. It's usually all right, I'm going to sit down. We're going to start just kind of coming up with stuff, and this is what's going to happen. And that was no different. It started as that. I think the first little, like, chorusy area there, I wrote that, and then I actually built drums out through the rest of the song, because I knew what the structure, I knew in my head after that first little part what I wanted the rest of the structure to be of the song. And then I built, guitars, bass, synths, and that sort of thing on top of that. So that was a little different, because I'd never really written stuff like that before, just knowing the structure of what I wanted to do, and then kind of going back for the meat and potatoes, if you will. Lyrically, most of the song and a lot of stuff I like to kind of talk about is we as people like to talk about that we believe certain things, and we believe this, we have faith in this, whatever it may be, but that's not the thing that in my mind defines who people are. It's their actions and how they treat others, how they approach the world around them. And that's kind of where that song kind of comes from, is that notion. And a lot of stuff I write has to deal with that, because in my mind, it's ridiculous to say that we think we should be able to believe something and not be defined by that, versus the way we interact with others, the way we treat others. So overarchingly, that's where that whole thing is coming from.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a really cool message.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Speaking of that, how is your writing process? Like, do you sit in a room and just go, or is it more like, I'm just gonna play guitar today, see what happens? Especially like with like breakdowns, because a lot of your breakdowns sound a lot different than most metalcore bands, because a lot of that stuff gets kind of repeated. So
Yeah.
how do you write and how do you not repeat what somebody else has done?
So I do try not to listen to what everyone else has done. So I obviously, like, in my car, am like listening to anything that I can get my hands on. But once I start writing, I'm trying to just think what vibes with what's happening in the rest of the song. The process itself. So I have a small child, so my writing and playing is very dictated by what is happening with this child. So it's kind of like, yeah, so it's like, all right, child's asleep, let's go do something. And so typically I would say generally I don't just like, it's been a while since I've just sat down and just played the guitar and just messed around just for, kind of the hell of it. That very rarely happens. It's usually, okay, I finished whatever previous song, now I'm going to sit down, make some decisions about what to do now. And so generally I know how in my head I want to start the song with something, whether it's I want a heavy riff here, a breakdown here, like a string intro, whatever it may be. And then so I'll do like a rough recording of that and kind of get a sense of it, put some MIDI drums over it that sound kind of what I'm looking for. And then it's just kind of, okay, this has happened. What conceptually should happen next? And I think that the danger sometimes in that, and that I have to watch, is you end up with those like riff salads that happens a lot in the gent world, where it's just like something happens, surprise, something else happens. And so I never want it to be that. So I do a lot of like, okay, I listen back through from the beginning. It goes this, it progresses to this and this. And so it just kind of, it's piece by piece, honestly. And then I don't usually attack anything with vocals at all, or really even think about that until after the music is done. And so I obviously hear in my head if like there should be something vocally here, but I don't really get into that too much until we're done with the music. And I think that's primarily because I have to think of things in a linear fashion of do this, then this, then this. Okay, now we can do these things. And so that I would say that's probably how that goes most of the time.
Right. Do you play drums too?
I dabble.
Okay.
I'll say I dabble. So
I was trying to listen, like, is this a machine or is this him?
Yeah, no, it's not me. So I can play enough to just like play conceptually what I want to hear.
Right.
Kind of, but I can't play the drums cleanly enough to record them. It's horrible. So I do have to create drums.
What's the hardest thing doing a solo project other than being in the band?
Creating drums is up there. I don't like the creating. That is one of those things I don't particularly love. But I mean, different than being in a band. I guess in a band, the best part is typically in most band scenarios, you kind of have your thing that you do in that band. So growing up, bands I was in, I was doing vocals. I'm sitting around while they're writing music or whatever and input here and there, but predominantly I'm responsible for lyrics, melodies, vocals. That's the deal. And so this is a little different because I can't think of it like that. I have to think holistically of how I want the whole thing to sound. And that's a little terrifying sometimes because if things go sideways and it doesn't sound good at the end, there's no one to blame but me. I was the only one here. So it's clearly my fault. So there's a little bit more pressure and terror involved in that, I would say. The hardest part typically, though, I would say, aside from the drum situation, is I don't always know if something sounds good until it's too late. Because there's been several times I've gotten really like almost done with something, and then I'll sit there and go, I don't know if I like this anymore. I'm not really into this. And my poor wife, who does not like heavy music, has to sit there and like listen to it with me and be like, okay, is this good? And she's like, I don't know, maybe, I guess. So that's probably the most difficult thing, is there's not these sounding boards to figure out what's sounding good and what's not. It's just kind of up to you.
Mm. How do you decide that? Like, how do you decide, hey, this is how I want it to sound? And like, how do you know, like, okay, this is it. This is it.
So the thing that I've been trying, and this is pretty recently in the last few months, I've tried to define that question after several times of almost finishing songs and realizing I didn't like them. I have to, whenever I set it down for a couple days and I come back, if there's like a part of the song where I'm like building to, or I'm just like anxious to get to, because I'm like, I really like that part and I still really like it after a few days, I'm usually going to be like, that's good to go. There has to be something in it that I still really would like if I were the listener. And yeah, it's hard to define sometimes. And it's kind of a roll the dice from time to time.
Right.
Yeah, I can get that, man. One thing that comes to mind for me, and we kind of discussed it earlier, sort of with actually, I think Punk Rock MBA really touches on this, but what's your take on the genre with, maybe rock as a whole, or even the subgenre that you kind of put music out in? Obviously, you're kind of referencing, even like with Machine Gun Kelly, a lot of the rock sound is kind of either being elements, maybe in more rap songs, or even like solo acts versus like a traditional band. Is that something that you kind of feel, or where do you see the genre as it is now for where you're at?
Yeah, so I have so many opinions about this topic, so I'm so glad you asked.
Yes, please impose.
Yes, and feel free to argue with me. It's okay, because I get in a lot of discussions about this with friends. So I kind of feel like rock in its heyday, so if we're talking specifically rock, in its heyday, the people who were making it, this was like the most angry, rebellious thing that they could think of was this. And that's what they made. And it came out great. And, I look at, the 70s and the 80s, rock was just crushing it. And I think because in their mind, this was the most rebellious thing you can do. There is nothing rebellious about rock and roll now. Nothing. Everyone who is angry enough to be rebellious like that is doing rap or metal. Like that's what they're doing. They're not playing rock music because it's not, I don't think it's that outlet anymore. So I think metal does suffer sometimes from its own pretentiousness, if you will, because a lot of metal artists have this thought that they're above it. Like they're above what's happening in the mainstream. There's a lot of resistance to buying into how streaming services work, or how do you utilize streaming services effectively. And honestly, that's why I think Fit for a King did so well with this release, is people still like that music, but there's a game that has to be played here, and not everyone thinks they're above it. So I think metal suffers some right now because of that, and some people are really bought into the traditional notion of how you make music. But overall, I don't think rock music, it's just not, it doesn't feel authentic to me anymore.
Kind of agree with that. So
no, I think that's a valid point, honestly. I mean, we have kind of like while we have some tastes similar, we are kind of opposites. He's very more rock delved, and I always kind of joke, I'm jokingly the basic bitch when it comes to music on here, but more top 40 rap, like EDM. And so we have these different views, but we've kind of talked about this off camera with rock, and it is like, obviously, like rock itself, like there's songs I have that I love. Like you said, more recent years, it either gets very oversynthesized and it doesn't even feel like a rock band, kind of like a Panic at Disco recently,
Yeah.
like up front. Or like you said, I feel like there is this sort of like, oh, we're in the cool kids club. We're trying to be almost, it's like not so much counterculture from like the norms. It's almost being counterculture from maybe letting people in or letting certain things experiment. Kind of
Yeah.
Like heads like saying, oh, these kids these days, like that kind of vibe.
Yeah. The gatekeepers in metal and rock they can be nasty. I am curious, so that there's still that trend of, you played metalcore for a while and then you go and play butt rock, right? Like Wage War has done it some. Architects just released a song that's very much in that vein. The songs are good. I mean, they honestly are. They're good songs. I'm curious how those, like, is there a point where those gain traction to a mainstream audience of any kind? Because I think we call it butt rock, but it's not like Five Finger Death Punch butt rock. I don't know. It feels different to me. Maybe I'm biased because I like the band. So I I'll call it. I could be a hypocrite. There's that possibility. But I'm curious how those actually, if they do eventually translate to a mainstream audience.
Yeah, it's so hard to tell, especially with the new Fit for a King, because I saw on forums that like, oh, they're just trying to be butt rock. But then you listen to Annihilation, it's like, well, no, they're not trying to be butt rock. They're still trying to do their own thing.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky situation, really.
Yeah. Well, Fit for a King, like, so there's melodic songs on the album, of course, but then there's really heavy songs. So, and I don't know. I feel like they've always had something kind of melodic on some of the album. What's the name of? I was listening to it earlier. There's a song off of the album before this one that was really, really melodic too. So I don't think that this direction is really any different for them. That's just kind of what they do. And I mean, that's working for them. Obviously, they're killing it on Spotify currently.
Yeah, for sure. So going back to like the music part of writing and stuff, what would you tell somebody if they're trying to start out as a musician? What's like the one thing that they don't realize? Like, is it finances? Is it practice? Is it touring? Like, what's that one thing that you're like, you better be prepared for this or you're not going to like it?
It's rejection. It is 100% rejection. Mm-hmm. It is a grind, and you have to have some thick skin, because everything you do is not going to be well received by everyone. I cannot tell you how many rejection things I have from various like playlists that's been submitted to and that sort of thing, just because what I do is not for everyone, and what everyone does isn't necessarily for me. And that's just how life is. And it's very easy to become emotionally attached to this thing that you've been working on. And you can't just conceptually let go and be like, all right, you don't like it, that's fine, move on. So I think that mental aspect of rejection and be able to understand that it's not necessarily something personal is the number one thing.
What's the hardest thing about being is this your actual job right now? It's just the solo project? No, so you have another job.
Yeah, I have a 9-to-5 job.
So what is the hardest part about that? Like doing a 9-to-5 and doing the solo stuff?
Yeah, it's honestly finding time is tough. There's and I think this comes with anything that you want to work at and be better at. And I have by no means, I would say, great at the music thing or really anything else, but if you want to strive to be good at anything, it's work. Like, you have to put time in. It doesn't come easily. Very few people are just naturally awesome at doing stuff. So even in a world where it's busy and you have a real job and, have kid, wife, family, that sort of thing, it's mainly get the reps in when you can, where you can. And even if that's just a little time here or a little time there, that's how it is. I truthfully, when I was recording Beneath the Veil, there was not a single time where I sat down for more than 30 minutes and was able to work on it. It was like 30-minute increments here, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here, until it finally just comes together. And it's just a matter of, do you want to spend time being productive and learning how to do something or being better at something? Or do you want to sit on the couch and watch TV? And that's kind of the decision that you got to make in life for anything. And that's not even music. That could be fitness, learning to write stories, whatever it may be.
So true.
Especially now with COVID, like there's so many more distractions now because you're home all the time.
Yeah. Yes. It's it's really easy for me to just sit down and be like, all right, I'm watching movies tonight because I like watching movies. And just doing that. Like it would be very easy to do that. It's hard to try and be better at something. So I think for people trying to get started, and there's obviously a financial component too that's really rough as well. So I don't want to downplay that, but even if you're doing something, even if it doesn't sound great, I think that that's part of it. That's part of learning. It's part of being better.
Going off that, like something sounding good, do you think any kind of young musician, like maybe they don't have 20,000, like one of your songs has 20,000 listens, which is great.
Yeah.
But Do you think people should just keep releasing stuff no matter what? Like, okay, I got a song, here you go. I got a song, here you go. Or should they be really sitting down like, maybe I shouldn't put this out yet?
I forget. I don't want to misattribute to what I'm going to say because I did not come up with this. So if somebody listening came up with this, I'm sorry. I saw it somewhere and I'm totally plagiarizing. My bad. But the concept is that it is better to release several songs that are 80% done versus sitting there paralyzed by fear of releasing something until it's 100% done. Because realistically, the reps of releasing the not quite perfect songs, you're going to get better quicker than sitting there just painstakingly going over and over the same song. And that's really tough because you listen to the same song and you're like tweaking things over and over. That shit is nuts. Like it's really hard to just let it go. It's really tough. So yeah, I'm of the mindset of you need to be releasing stuff. And look, if you release stuff to Spotify and you're killing it a year later, you can take it off of Spotify. You can contact the distributor, have them stop distributing to Spotify, and it's not on there anymore. Mm-hmm. But I think whatever feedback you can get on it is valuable.
Right. No, I think so too. I think you become victim if you try to perfect that you won't ever release. That's something I've seen even beyond music. Like, if you're trying to be a perfectionist, you're never gonna like have it out there. And then the other thing too is a lot of these platforms, whether it be social or even like Spotify or music, I think it rewards you for having content. So the more you have out, mm-hmm. it helps just not me on the editorial side, although that does give you more shots at a chance for getting more review and look at.
Yeah.
The computer elements, the algorithms are going to recognize, okay, this person puts content out, so this creates more like, all right, it has to have some decency of quality.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on the Spotify algorithm at all. It's its own enigma, that is for sure. But I have noticed that as I've continued to release things over and over, it's picked up by the algorithm much quicker. Like it's starting to pick up significantly quicker. Because the first thing I released, it took 2.5 months before it got hit by any algorithmic playlist at all. So that was annoying. But
yeah, no, I get that.
But the thing I just released, I'm already seeing algorithmic plays from it. So you're right. You have to have things out there because Spotify's deal is how do we want to promote what keeps you on this platform, and that's the game right there. And so if you're continuously putting stuff out and engaging on the platform, the logic would dictate that the algorithm is going to pick you up quicker.
Right.
Before I get to my last question, which is going to be a tradition in the show now, Max, you got anything?
I guess the one thought I had that we haven't touched on is obviously probably before this you did perform live like any other artist. Is there any sort of like memorable experiences you have from performing live or things that you kind of missed that you look forward to doing when things are a little more normal, getting back to performing out there?
So my most memorable live performances are from before Chasing Airplanes.
Okay, yeah.
Truthfully, and so I don't know how familiar you guys were with the Cornerstone Music Festival. That was big, like Christian music festival thing in the 2000s. Anyway.
Okay, yeah.
So anyway, lots of heavy bands would go, and it's basically this big cornfield, and everybody pitches tents, and there's stages, and then there's just bands playing all the time, like all day, all week, bands playing.
Wow.
So like August Burns Reds played there, Devil Wears Prada, I saw them there. Saw 4 Year Strong play there one year. A lot of bands play there. So we did that, the last like tour thing that I was a part of with that particular band. We were at Cornerstone for that last week, and those shows were so much fun. Nothing sexy about those stages whatsoever. It's hot. It's in the middle of the summer, but like, I don't know, kids like show up to see bands they've never heard of. And there's just a lot of energy and excitement and people willing to listen to new things and experience new things. And I don't know, that was pretty awesome. And that was also whenever the coolest thing is we were from South Mississippi. We're in Illinois for Cornerstone Festival, and there was like kids from Pennsylvania who knew lyrics to songs I had written, and I was like, what the hell, that is awesome. And because that was not during the like streaming age where, you know, people from it's easy for someone from elsewhere to hear what you've done. So I would say that's probably my most memorable thing. Not the biggest show I've done or anything, but the thing that still sticks out the most, I would say.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Sounds like a rock festival, Field of Dreams, honestly.
Kind of. It was very gross. There was not a lot of showering, and people were very disgusting. It is very memorable.
I definitely miss shows. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I was telling my wife this fall, I'm like, I just miss going to a concert. It's like so depressing.
It is. We get a lot of people come through here in the Tampa Bay area, typically. Nobody's right now, so that's kind of depressing. There was a really cool show here a few years ago where We Came as Romans and Emmure played here, which was a really odd combination, I thought, at the time. But they played together, and it was awesome. It was just amazing. So yeah, those experiences are tough not having them at all now. But with that, there are opportunities. I like that. Fit for a King did a live virtual show. I thought that was cool. I don't know if you saw Suicide Silence did a virtual tour where they basically opened, for anyone who doesn't know, they basically opened up the server for this particular day for this virtual live show to this geographic region. And if you weren't in the geographic region, you couldn't get in. And then the next day it'd be in the next geographic region. And that's what they did for several weeks, which I thought was really cool. But like the production was awesome. Like it was really, really good. Light show, the whole thing. So there's been some really good adaptation, I think, to the environment.
Wow, that's such a concept.
It is. And we do want to go back to shows, but if we have to adjust, they still put on great shows. I mean, I gotta say that. For sure.
I'm very curious what this like stapled question you have is there. That's like burning.
Okay, so this is something new we're trying. So at the end of
the final question.
Yeah. At the end of every interview, we're gonna try this. So if there's a young guitarist, drummer, whatever, listening to this, what would 3 things that you would take from your experience to tell them? I know we talked about rejection and stuff, but what are 3 things that you take away from your experiences that you would tell them that, here's my advice, here's what you should look forward to, and here's something that you should realize? So
I would say, aside from the rejection thing, because I stand by that one, that's huge. But if you're of the mindset that you want to play in a band and like that's the thing you want to do, you want to make music with other people, that's very rewarding and that's great. Ultimately, find people that you mesh with as people before you worry about the quality of their instrumentation, because you're going to find it much more. It's going to be a better experience for everyone involved, you, them, the listener, and everyone, if you have similar mindset about things. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be the exact same person. That's ridiculous. But that you're on the same page and people that you kind of jive with. That's going to be more important than if they're just awesome at playing the guitar. That's so incredibly important. Because I think there's a lot of bands that have been going for a long time that you can tell that they're of one accord, if you will, about what they want to do. And then maybe they're not the best at their instruments. I mean, they're okay, they're good. I think Parkway Drive is what comes to mind. I love Parkway Drive, but they're not the best at their instruments by any means, but they make good songs. They seem to be of the same mindset about what they want to do, and it produces really good music. So that, the rejection, and I mean, I think the other thing is just do something. There's a lot of excuses to not do something. A lot of excuses to not get started of, I don't have the right guitar. I don't have the right interface. I don't have the right DAW to be recording with it. It's all kinds of stuff that you could do. I don't have a band yet. I think there's value in just starting and doing something, because that first little bit is going to be the thing that kind of gets you, further along. I did a lot of stuff in GarageBand on a Mac before I did anything else, because that's what I had available. That's what was there. And that's what you do, you know. So I think those are my things.
Oh, those are some. I think if I was starting out and you gave me those, I'd be like, okay, yeah, definitely get it.
Good.
I honestly think it's consistent that you can take those principles across anything. So it's obviously, it's kind of like doing it and just sticking to it, and then finding the right people that are going to actually support you. You know?
Yeah. They say the same thing about, you know, like losing weight. You know, it's not about losing 40 pounds or whatever. It's about taking the first step of doing it, surrounding yourself with the right people who support it. You know, so I think you're right. It can be applied to a lot of different things in life, regardless what your goal is. So I agree. I think it's very applicable everywhere.
No, it's awesome, dude. Before we let you go, what do you have for future projects? How can people find you for your music, overall, socials, the whole nine?
Yeah. So on Instagram at Chasing Airplanes Music, check it out there. You can see all kinds of fun photos of my daughter and puppies and the occasional music thing. So yeah, that's good times. On Spotify or whatever streaming platforms you have under Chasing Airplanes. So whatever your poison is there. I do have a song called The City coming out on December 11th. That's going to be kind of the last standalone single I do for a little bit, because I am in process of doing a full-length album. That's probably going to be, I'm tentatively saying April. Tentatively. I'm not ready to commit to that, but I'm saying that tentatively. I'm not of the mindset that albums are still like the greatest way to go for marketing oneself, but I just want to do it, so I'm doing it. So why not? So that'll be coming as well. So if you follow on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, if people are still using Facebook, you will receive updates in regards to that as it approaches. So
that's awesome.
That's what I got going on.
Cool. Yeah, we'll make sure to link that in the description for everybody to check out.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect, Kyle. Thank you so much. Stick around for some off-air talk. But yeah, no, this is the interview. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, man. It was awesome.
Thanks, guys, for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah.